Hello and welcome back to another Sister A video. This time it's week 4, the Fonts and Spaces Finishing Touches assignment, and we're going to be doing part 2, Finishing Touches. So we're almost done. Last video we worked on our fonts and spaces, so if you didn't do that, please do that first. And we're going to start right here. Alright, the very first thing it has you do is look through and click on these and check them out regarding Flexbox, FlexFlow, Justify Content, what these mean. And it's got a quick, brief description of each one. And so it's telling you we're now going to put in the finishing touches and layout of the home page. All right, so we're going to actually be laying our page out like you did some of the activities in the CSS positioning activity. You did some Flexbox where you had the parent and the child, and I know and you had a reading about it, but we're going to be doing just a tiny bit of Flexbox, and you'll be surprised to see how little you have to have on your page to make it work. So here's a couple of links, Flexbox, and it's telling about that. Here's another one, a complete guide to Flexbox. If you should take a minute and refresh yourself on that and look it over. And if after you do that, this is step 2 here. Okay, so what it's saying on this very first thing you're going to do is you're going to set up a section 1, comma, section 2, comma, and footer, and in that you're going to put a display flex. And that's getting started, getting it set up. I usually like to keep my things together, and this is part of a section, so here's my section area. Try to keep things organized. It makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to do sec 1. Since it's a class, it's a dot, comma, 1 space, comma, 1 space, and footer. Notice footer does not have a dot or a pound sign because it is semantic, and you do not need it when it is semantic. All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this. And we're telling it we need it to flex. This is the first part. All right, step 3. So I'm going to copy and paste that as well. The first one, FlexFlow, has a dash. The other one does not. Make sure you do your code exactly, or things will not work properly. All right, once you've done that, we're going to add flex 1 to both the left and right. So go back up here where we had the left column, right column. Remember, this is the parent. Create an image max with a max width of 100%. That means all of our images, even though you put an image width, and that's fine, it won't let any of them take up more than 100%, and that'll make them more resizable. So I'm going to make an image, IMG. Notice there it's semantic, so there is not a dot or a number sign. And a max width of 100%. This will make it so that we can resize, and I'll show you what I mean by resizing. And what resizing does is it helps when you have different sized screens. That's when you're going to really need that resizing ability, so things don't collapse on each other. All right, so we need a little bit more CSS, and it's telling you that we need to set a limit on how small the right and left columns can become. And we're going to do that by adding this to our flex. Remember, we made it flex 1 up here in the left and right column, flex 1. We're going to replace that with this. Instead of just flex 1, we're going to make it paste flex 1 space 0 space 15 EM. Step 4, now we're going to finish making our section 1, 2, and footer. We're going to add these two properties, align items and justify content. We're going to put those both at center. And there's a little bit more of an explanation here. So you're going to just set both of them at center, and if you flow down here a little bit, you'll see they're already here. So I'm going to take each of these and put them in that area and align item center. All right, and we're going to also add a padding of 10 pixels to our sections that are flexed. Notice section 3 is not in there. That is because section 3 is not flexed. All right, now if I did this right, and I think I did, and the next part is the navigation. If I did this right, when we go over to the page, it should look left and right columns. Things are not at the very edge. Notice how nice that all looks. Oh yeah, page is looking good. All right, before we move on to the top navigation, we're going to finish off the footer. And the footer, what we need to make sure is that you have a padding of about 10 pixels. You can have more, don't have much less than that, but that's going to put space between each of the icons. And 10%, or excuse me, 10 pixels usually does a good job, and you put that over here in the social media. I put 15, which also looks good. And we also need to set the width of the icon, which we did last week. And the last thing that we need to do that wasn't done yet is rotate the social media to the right. Notice, if you notice, it's over here on the left side of the right side. So we want it to go over to the right edge. So you do that just right here with the padding, float right. And that brings it over where it belongs. All right, now we move on to our wonderful navigation. We're going to lay them in line here. We want them to go across the page. And we're going to do that by going into the nav LI and putting display inline block. So make sure you put it in the right place, nav LI. And don't forget that semicolon. It laid them next to each other, but we need to space them out and do some other things to make them finished. So they're headed in the right direction. I put my line height at 1.35. I'm going to make it much higher. I'm going to make it 3 EM instead. Now it looks like a lot for now, but once we move things over and move this blue bar up where it's going to go, it won't be that bad. All right, the next thing we need to do is move the navigation bar up. Now this is the top of the page, the top of that black there, and it's harder if you don't have a colored background, and you might want to make it a colored background in the content just for doing this, so you'll know when you get to the top of the page. You should have a small white border above that, so make sure you don't go way up and over. So if you don't already have a color for the background, set it for while you're doing this part. I have black and it's easy to see. All right, so we're going to adjust our margin top of that nav bar, and that's going to be done here in just the plain old nav. And you're going to go margin top, and it's going to be a negative number to bring it backwards. So I'm going to start with maybe minus 75 pixels. And it's going to take a little, seeing how far, see how it's moved it up that far? Well, we've got probably about 10, 20, 30, maybe 30 more. So I'm going to go minus 100. See how close that gets me? Ooh, almost. And maybe another 15. That's pretty doggone perfect. All right, now, do you see something wrong here? Yes, I see something wrong here. What I see is that everything is sitting on top of my words, and my logo is sitting underneath the edge of my banner image. In NavUL, you're going to put margin, and it's going to be 0. And that will make it so it doesn't have any space between these two, but also my logo is sitting underneath. We'll fix that in a moment. And it shows you the logo is sitting underneath the edge of that. So we're going to do a couple of things to help that. We're going to go down into the logo now, because this is a combined thing. And we're going to tell it we need its position to be relative to the navigation. We want the logo also to have a top of 10 pixels and a left. All you have to put is top and left, 10 pixels, so that it's out away from the edge, 10 and 10. You can't really see that because I don't have a border around my logo picture. This is what's, I like this kind of a thing that doesn't have a background color. And normally I would just leave it like that, but I'm doing this so that you can have all the steps. So it's telling you to put a border. And I'm going to put just what they have here, which is 2 pixels wide, black, and solid. And the relative brought it out from underneath the logo, or underneath the banner image. So it's no longer under that. It also tells you to set a background color. It tells you to do white, but you can do any color that you want for a background behind here. Sometimes it already has a background color and you don't need to do that, but if you have transparent like mine is, you'll need to do that as well. And so I'm going to pick a background color for my logo. Of a color that kind of goes along with my blues and blacks that I have picked out already. I have it written down over here. Just so that you can see it's a blue. Now, we're getting close, really close. All right, we need to make those move to the right. We need to make them move to the right and have a better spacing between them. Nav A should have these items as well as a padding item of, it's saying to do it like 1 EM space 1 EM. And that's for the height, and it tells you how to do this, the height and the width of each of these, so that when you make a hover over it, it will have a wider area to be clickable. So that's what that is for, and that must go in nav, and I just put it in the wrong spot. It has to go in nav A. And I kind of like the way the 1 EM and 1 EM. You might have to adjust it, 0.75, 0.5, 0.65. Play around with those till it looks right. Make sure you have a padding of 1 EM in the regular nav, in the plain old nav, I call it. And I finishes off nav A. In nav LI, we also need to put a padding left, and that's going to move our things to the right. And I'm going to start with maybe 150 pixels. Some things are EM and some things are pixels. This is pixels. Now notice it stacked them, so I went a little bit too far. So let me take it back about 25 pixels, because you do not want them wrapping, but you want them to be spaced nicely. That looks really good to me. I think I'm going to leave them there. So that finishes that. Now we're going to make a hover so that it does something in particular when you hover over it. And I'm going to put that right here. Now this one's real important you write it correctly. Nav A, no space. You put a colon, hover. If you put a space, it will not work. All right, so nav A, hover. Now I'm going to put down, and that's what it's telling you to do here. I'm going to put, or just copy and paste and see if these are the things that I want. And if not, I'll adjust. Oh yeah, these are mine. All right. See how it's a little wider than the word and a little taller? And it creates actually a little button around it. The thing that creates the button is this box shadow. I like rounded corners. You don't have to put rounded corners, but you do need that shadow, box shadow, if you want it to be a box or have like a button around it. You need the color of the writing, perhaps, and I have mine changed to red. You don't have to change all these things, but you do need it to change. And I also changed my background color to something that really stands out. Your colors are your choices. Can you believe it? My page is finished. It looks totally awesome. It's got a left column and a right column. Section 3 looks great. That looks good. Now, let me show you that resizing thing that I've been talking about. If you grab the lower right-hand corner and you bring it up and in, you'll notice my text all stays put in its boxes and my image stays in the box, and our homepage is finished. I hope you have been helped a little bit by my videos, and I will see you on the next go around.